Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show, joining you every morning at 8 a.m. UK time, although today is a little bit different. We've got a bit of a three-parter of today's show. Of course, with Arsenal playing their first pre-season game yesterday, we're going to kind of split this show into the Arsenal Transfer Show and then the Raw Reaction Show afterwards as well, and then go into your questions. So a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss. Let's not waste any time. Good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Paul, Sean, A1, Masibulele, good morning to Penny Ween, Carl Franklin. We got Tom, we got Francois, Stevie, Martin, Stephen, Johnny, Marcus, Amira, Creeper Fam, and Tom and Latvian Gooner as well. And plenty more of you guys. Also, do make sure you drop a like on the video. Massive thank you once again for helping us reach 50,000 subscribers. It means incredibly much to us. And if you are indeed one of our brand new subs and brand new listeners, you're now part of the journey to 100k. Thank you so much, everyone, as always. Right, let's go with the stories, shall we? We kick off with the transfer aspect of the show. Arsenal rejecting a £2.1 million bid from Besiktas for Rob Holding. Rob Holding, of course, has been expected to move on this summer. He's not expected to be a big part of next season plan, and Arsenal are certainly open to selling. But David Ornstein's reports of this €2.5 million bid, £2.1 million, is frankly laughable. Like it's a terrible amount of money to be offered. For me, I'd be trying to get as close to 10 million as feasibly possible. He has a year left with an option of a further year on his contract. He's homegrown, which I know doesn't actually affect Besiktas, which is probably part of that reason. But if a Premier League club was coming in for Rob Holding, Arsenal should be looking to get upwards, well upwards of 5 million, closer to 10 for me. But it does indicate and does give you, I think, a little bit of this kind of feeling around how much players are worth, how much the players that are on the periphery of things, how much the players that are expendable, if you like, is worth. But it is an incredibly low offer, and certainly one that Arsenal have laughed off. Moussa Diaby, who was said to be a target of Arsenal this summer, is subject of some serious interest now from Aston Villa. They've had a 35 million plus add-ons bid, that's euros, by the way, rejected by Leverkusen. However, according to Fabrizio Romano, this deal is on and that negotiations will continue, and that Aston Villa are going to push ahead to try and convince Bayer Leverkusen to sell the player, who is said to be very open to the idea of joining Aston Villa. It would be a club that would be able to give him regular game time in the Premier League, which is what he wants. Whereas if he was to join Arsenal, of course, he'd be going up against Bukayo Saka or Gabriel Martinelli, significantly restricting the amount of minutes that he would be able to get. So it seems this openness to move to Diaby is helped by the fact that they can offer him those guaranteed minutes that he otherwise wouldn't be getting if he was moving somewhere else, and yet still making that step up to the Premier League. And Villa, you have to say, under Unai Emery, doing some very interesting business indeed. A lot of people might suggest if he's going for that amount of money, why aren't Arsenal in for him? And there were suggestions that Diaby was being valued around 70 million. So these numbers have come considerably down, perhaps due to Diaby's openness to make that move. But would be a very reasonable amount of money if they can get him for less than 50 million euros, but maybe we'll have to see it go past that 50 million euro price mark. And lastly, on a transfer side of things, Sky reporting yesterday that West Ham have been reassured the documents for the Declan Rice deal will be sent over today, that everything will be signed, and that the deal will indeed be done. Of course, we're still waiting for an announcement. We'll still potentially be waiting for an announcement. There is hope that Arsenal will be able to announce this deal and the Timber deal before the club fly to the US at the end of the weekend. And that's certainly a hope that they have, that they can get Declan Rice on the tour, and that all the documents should be being sent over to get that all completed and ready so that Declan Rice can take part, as well as Yuri and Timber, who we know we're only really an announcement away now from taking part in the tour. So Declan Rice to Arsenal is imminent, an announcement is imminent, and finally all the chaotic debates and frustration will come to a very thankful close. So this saga coming to an end. The announcement is nearing. Thank goodness that's the case. But certainly that is what a good piece of news is all about in transfers. And that completes part one. Let's move to part two, which of course is our raw reaction of yesterday's game against Nurnberg. So Arsenal played their first pre-season game yesterday. It was a game which I think held a lot of promise. And if you remember back to last year's game, in which Arsenal won 5-3, won a very chaotic fixture indeed, it held quite a lot of promise. It didn't deliver that. It's fair to say it did not deliver the same frenetic, combustible, chaotic game that we got last time around. However, what it did provide was an insight into some of the players, how they're at, where they're at in terms of fitness, positions, about what system we might play. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of preseason and seeing these players develop a little bit more. But it ended 1-1. The frustration from an Arsenal point of view was at the beginning of the game, Martin Odegaard was confirmed to be out of the fixture. He suffered a knock during the warm-up. Mikel Arteta, speaking after the game, was asked about that. He said, was Odegaard okay? He said, no. He felt something. He was asked if it was hamstring. He said, no, I think it was his calf. He got a knock there and he wasn't feeling good enough to play. Leo Trossard also had an issue and came off, as we know, in the second half. They're not said to be too serious. That's the hope. That is the indication that they're, just minor things that you're not going to take too much of a problem with. Arteta said, hopefully not, when asked if they were serious. But it's one of those things in preseason where you never, ever kind of take risks, and we aren't doing that. So Odegaard's facing maybe a short spell on the sidelines, but hopefully could be back very soon. And Trossard also now facing recovery. What we did see, though, is the return of William Saliba, which was fantastic news. And whilst the likes of Zinchenko, Tomiyasu, Martinelli and Elneny are not yet back, there is optimism about those players, especially the latter three. Zinchenko might be a little bit longer, but certainly there is optimism around all the players that could indeed return to the field very, very soon, which is, of course, fantastic news. Now, Saka kicked off the preseason with an absolute stunner. I think we can all agree that was one of what is becoming a bit of a trademark player for us. Saka has kicked off that preseason with a fantastic strike, cutting on his left foot, booting across the keeper, low, hard-driven strike. Certainly, I think something that we're going to see a lot more during this season, and a type of strike that hopefully will be the enemy of a lot of teams when we play across the Premier League during the course of the 23-24 campaign. I wanted to give a shout out to Jakub Kiwior, who I thought really stood out. His fullback partner, Ben White, was also very, very good. But Kiwior, I thought, who was playing in a role that is obviously, as we know, occupied by Zinchenko, was moving into midfield, was playing some really cute little passes. There was one in the first half, which first time he played through to Trossard, which set up a chance on the left flank with Nelson running in behind for Nketiah. Thought that was great. Yes, there was one misplaced pass at the back, a little bit lax of concentration, a little bit too relaxed perhaps on the ball. But overall, I thought Jakub Kiwior was really, really good. And actually, I think when you compare the performance with Tierney's performance, you can see why Arteta is using Kiwior over Tierney, because stylistically, it's clear that he is kind of adapting to that inverted role, the characteristics of the role that Arteta has called for. Kiwior is certainly being able to do that a lot more seamlessly than Tierney is. Tierney does provide and was good, I thought, when he came on. But I think obviously Tierney struggles playing this type of role that Arteta demands. Meanwhile, on the other flank, Ben White was fantastic. Really good combinations with Saka running up that right flank. Was let down a couple of times, I think, by Fabio Vieira's lax passing at moments, and could have had some better chances to create for his teammates, but was forced into really wide areas. But I thought Ben White was really, really good as well, and certainly is not going to be giving up that fullback spot whatsoever. Kai Havertz, of course, came on in the second half to make his debut for Arsenal in pre-season, and positionally, I think, is the first thing to discuss. He replaced, whilst he did replace, I think it was Reiss Nelson in terms of a sub, he played in Trossard's role, with Trossard moving actually into the centre-forward position, and Nketiah moved out left, and Jesus moved out right to replace Saka. But Havertz playing in that, what I know a lot of people were describing as the Xhaka role. It's not that. No one can replace Xhaka. And in fact, Mikel Arteta said, after the game, he said he's not a replacement. He's not going to be a like for like, because everybody's going to be very different to what Granit gave us. It will be very difficult, but Kai has tremendous qualities for our way of playing. He also said the talent, the quality, the physicality, and the goal threat that he has shown over the past few years, I think it's true that we have to see how we adapt him the best. He needs to build some relationships on that pitch, but so far he's adapting really well, and we're really happy to have him. It was a very quiet performance from Havertz. It was definitely a performance of a player that's learning his teammates, learning where they're going to be on the field, learning the system. If you're expecting a big bang from a player that's been playing, in a system, in a team that have been completely and utterly dire over the last year, and frankly Havertz has been played out of position in a system that doesn't suit his style under a number of different coaches, has had no stability whatsoever. I know that there is an easy comparison to make with, we saw last year Gabriel Jesus burst onto the scene in this game against Nurnberg, but the difference between the two is stark. Jesus is coming back off a league winning season, playing under Pep Guardiola, who plays a system that has plenty of characteristics similar to that of Arsenal, and was coming in with a real big point to prove, and on good form as well. He ended the 21-22 season in really hot form, and went into Arsenal's new season on a really hot form. Havertz is the absolute opposite of that, and he's coming on having to build up confidence, build up adaptability to the new system that he finds himself in. And certainly he'll be growing into his time at Arsenal. Expecting an immediate impact, I think, would be a little bit too much. But what I did find interesting of his performance was obviously the fact that he was playing in the midfield. He did get an elbow to the face basically minutes after he came on as well, which perhaps had something to do with a little bit of a held back or restrained approach to the rest of his game. But I think more so it's about the idea of kind of learning the relationships on the field, learning where his teammates are going to be in a system that he is not used to playing yet. But that will improve and grow with time. Folarin Balogun, though, missed 2 massive chances in the game. I did the Arsenal Way show, obviously, after our match reaction show yesterday on the Arsenal Way, and I was pretty critical of Balogun, and I woke up this morning in reflection. I don't think I was too critical at all. The reason why I look at Balogun in this sense is because if this was Eddie Nketiah having these chances, which, he's taken the ball around goalkeepers, had opportunities to score in the 6-yard box or in those tight spaces and done it. I think if it was an Eddie Nketiah that missed these chances, or even maybe Gabriel Jesus who missed these chances, imagine if it was Fabio Vieira missing these chances, they would be getting scathing criticism, I think, from the fan base. But I didn't see all that much for Folarin Balogun in the same sense. And that is a frustration for me. I wish we could be a bit more balanced. And so for that balance, I think that Balogun should, without a doubt, be scoring. Without question, should be scoring those opportunities. And after the season he's had, I know that he can score those chances. I think that he's obviously coming off the back of a season where he's still in a little bit of two minds. I think mentally there's probably something that's going on in the background. And I think that first chance that he had where, again, he was laid off by Jesus for a shot and a chance at goal at a tight angle, but it was an open goal still and managed to hit the post. I think that was maybe in his mind for this finish. All he had to do was slot it low and composed between the sticks, but clipped it into the side netting with a really strange finish. You have to score those chances. If we're talking about him being a player that's worth £50 million, teams that are watching him are going to expect him to score those chances. So you have to be critical when those moments come up. And I think certainly that is the case with being critical. What I would say is the benefit is that he got himself into those opportunities. He got himself into those positions. He got himself in the right place, used his speed to get behind for the second chance in particular, was always available in the box when he was there. I felt as though with the chance that Gabriel Jesus created when he had a shot on the left-hand side that their goalkeeper parried to the left, Balogun was a little slow in getting into that space. And actually, if he had gambled sooner and maybe had a bit more of an instinct to get into that area, he would have had a tap in that moment. But overall, I think obviously there's a lot of promise. There's a lot still to come from Balogun as well. I look forward to seeing, and hopefully he stays. I want him to stay. I want him to improve. I want him to be an asset for this club. But what I would say is, of course, I just think there's a bit of balance that's sometimes lacking when we talk about some players compared to others. As I say, if this was Nketiah, he'd be getting absolutely battered. So Balogun, for me, has to score those 2 chances and needs to improve. Lastly, before I go to part 3 and your questions, is a highlight of Nwaneri and, of course, Myles Lewis-Skelly, who I thought, as 2 youngsters, really shined. A shout out as well for Raul Waters, who had a good game, could have scored, good opportunity from a corner with a header and a really good block towards the end of the game as well. But Nwaneri, initially, the skill, the technical ability, really outshone a player like Fabio Vieira, for instance. If you're playing a game tomorrow and you want to give 30 minutes to somebody, I'd rather give Nwaneri, 30 minutes as opposed to Fabio Vieira at this point. I feel like he's a better investment of time right now than Fabio Vieira is. That might seem harsh on the Portuguese player, but football has to be ruthless. You've got to be ruthless with this. You can't, especially when you've only got a certain amount of time to give players. Nwaneri's technical ability, his progression of the ball, the skill, the little roulette turn that he did, great interplay. He's already really, I think, attuned to how this team operates, and of course, how he operates better than some of the others in terms of his understanding of where others are on the field. Lewis-Skelly, meanwhile, really confident on the ball. Fantastic pass through to Folarin Balogun. Should absolutely have been given an assist for that. It deserved to be an assist, that pass through to Balogun. It's a shame that it wasn't. But both players, both youngsters and Raw Waters, I think, certainly were fantastic and really have these opportunities. I hope they all go on the US tour. I know last time we went to Nurnberg, we didn't take players like Waters. We did take Waters. We didn't take players like Salaruddin. We didn't take Charlie Patino. We did take Waters. I hope that we take these three. I'd love to see them all out there and given opportunities on the tour as well, because certainly these have massive, massive futures. Mikel Arteta speaking though after the game, and of course talking about a number of things. He was asked about transfers. He says, yeah, we've been pretty busy, a lot of renewals as well, and bringing Kai. Let's see how we can improve the squad. He was asked, will you know if you'll have more players for the takeoff to America? He says, I don't know, we are working on them, and when we have something to announce, we will. He was asked about kind of it being a pretty positive summer, though. He says, I think so. There's still a lot of things to do. Things develop all the time. And in the last few things as well, we need to be really on it and alert. But we are pleased so far. He was asked directly about Rice and Timber, but as you can expect, didn't answer the question. So, it was never expected that he would give an answer to those players at all. He was asked about Balogun, though, and he did say, well, this is what he has been doing, and that's why we gave him the minutes that he deserves to show what he can do. I would say that I don't think he gave Balogun enough minutes. I think Nketiah should have been off at half-time and Balogun started at half-time. I don't know why we delayed that. I don't know why you would seed any more doubt that there's a place for him in this squad, and he did that, I think, a little. So I was critical of the fact that Balogun didn't start either the game or at half-time. That was a bit of a missed opportunity, I think. But overall, I think Arteta will be taking the positives from this game, and we can hope to see better in the near future. Right, let's go to part two then, and your questions, transfers, game or otherwise, right after this. Oh, stretching out. It's very much needed. It's a long show this morning, but we're there. We're through. I'll tell you what, I woke up at 7:20 today. I woke up at 7 and then I checked my phone and all of a sudden it was 7:20 and I was like, no, I need to get this show together. So thankfully managed to get it all done and sorted. But I am only going to be doing about 10 minutes or so of questions, guys. I've got an appointment to attend, of which you'll hear more about later on this morning. But 10 minutes of questions. We'll smash through these. Right, let's go to Name says, with Trossard being played in midfield and the introduction to Havertz and Smith Rowe being told he's wanted, do we potentially see it likely a removal of Fabio Vieira? I've said and have continued to maintain that there is a 2-season rule. You get 2 seasons. If you're a new signing, you get 2 seasons. You got to impress. Gabriel Jesus has impressed. Zinchenko has impressed. Ben White, Gabriel, all these guys impressed. Ramsdale in their first 2 seasons. Some of them are still just in their first season and still going through now to their second. But players like Fabio Vieira, Lokonga, Tavares, have not impressed. And Tavares and Lokonga, I'd be moving on this summer. Fabio Vieira, I'm willing to give another season to because of 2-season rule. But maybe with the style of play which we're looking with Trossard, Smith Rowe, Havertz, all potentially occupying a position on the left 8/10 style role that we're going to be using in partner with Odegaard, maybe we see difference. But what I would say is that with Odegaard injured now, maybe there's something of an opening for Fabio Vieira to showcase what he's capable of. Red Star says, Tom, with the Nwaneri impressing, would you see Vieira sold? You say there is 2-year rule for signings, so could you see that being broken and Vieira leaving? I don't think Vieira will leave this summer. Maybe he'll go on loan as a last resort, but I don't see him leaving, personally. Amira says, the disrespect towards Eddie is boring now. Sure, he may not be good enough, but why do some fans feel the need to say blank would have scored whenever he misses? Almost everyone misses a chance. And this is why I said if Eddie missed those chances that Balogun missed, he would be getting absolutely scathing criticism. So that's why I think we had to be balanced in the assessment of Balogun's 2 missed chances. Thomas says, if you could bring back one Arsenal legend to add to the current squad, who would it be and why? Well, I think our biggest need obviously remains still, I think, in kind of another midfield box-to-box role. I think Cesc Fabregas obviously fulfills that perfectly. If not, Sandy Cazorla, another player that I absolutely adore playing in their midfield. And if I could, playing in their prime, Liam Brady is the obvious other candidate as well. Martin says, Amira, Eddie didn't score a single goal coming off the bench last season. That isn't good enough. I think the criticisms of Eddie are well-founded. I think if Arsenal are smart, they try and get a good fee for him this summer and keep Balogun, and that's the dynamic I would choose. But I think certainly we need to be a bit balanced across players when it comes to criticism. Owen Thomas says, what is it with this fan base? A 1-1 game in pre-season where we rotated the kids in the second half, and there's people actually moaning about how we're going nowhere. I actually haven't seen that, Owen, personally. And I would tell you if I did, and, I'm not active enough on social media to feel like I can see enough. I didn't personally see that. Maybe I missed it, but I didn't see a meltdown, which I was really thoughtful of, actually. I was really thoughtful of the idea that we didn't have a meltdown. I think there's an understanding about this game, of what it is, about where it is in the schedule, about what's still to come. Arsenal have got some really interesting tests coming up against Man United, against Barcelona, the MLS All-Stars. Then, of course, we've got Monaco and then Man City in the Community Shield. So I think there's a lot to be excited for this summer still. I think there's a lot still to learn about this team this summer. So I'm not losing my head about a game. But I personally didn't really see anybody losing their head at all about this game. So there you go. Anne says, Tom, you didn't mention Trusty's performance. I think we used something like 22 players. So if I was going to miss anyone, it's going to happen. Trusty, I thought was decent. Was a good block or two, a couple of good passes, a couple of good recoveries. He didn't shine. He's not putting in performances that I'm saying, wow, this guy's going to start for us. I think that'd be unrealistic to expect that Trusty is Arsenal's future. I think I'm still expecting him to leave on a permanent deal this summer. He wasn't massively tested either against a second-tier German side, So I just think that, to be honest, regarding Trusty, it's good that he's done well. But at the same time, I don't necessarily see. I just don't see how he has a future at Arsenal at this point in time. And I don't think that's an unfair assessment of Austin Trusty. I wish him the absolute best, but I just don't see where his level is going to be that enough to get him into the Arsenal team. Let's go to Seb says, so is Saliba fully fit now? That is the indication. And certainly he wouldn't be being played if they didn't feel he was fit enough. Maybe not fully fit, but certainly if they didn't feel he was fit enough to get into a position where he could start this game. Jack is the truth says, unblock me on Twitter, please. Thanks. I don't know what your handle is, so I can't. I don't know what you've done to get blocked, but yeah, send me a DM on Instagram at the Gooner Talk, and I can try and sort that out. If he says, what's the latest on the Botelho rumours? Again, nothing has progressed from the story we heard from Brazil the other day, suggesting that Arsenal were approaching the player to look into the idea of signing him for around 10 million euros. But we've heard nothing progress on that side of things in the few days since we talked about that story. But anything that does change, you can be sure that we will let you know. Jaden says, should we be worried about Odegaard's injury? I don't think so, because it's just a knock. He should be all right for the MLS tour, or the US tour. We are playing the MLS All-Stars, but very much an US tour rather than MLS tour. I'm not worried about Odegaard. No, I think it was a precautionary change, and that's absolutely fine. I'm hoping that he's given the rest and required needs before he comes back into the side. So hopefully there's not going to be a problem. Samuel says Cedric has to go. He's nowhere good enough. And I absolutely agree. What I would say is that Hector Bellerin started this game last year, and left pretty swiftly. So I don't think there's going to be any issue in Cedric's future necessarily being guaranteed to be still here, because Bellerin started against Nurnberg last year and left. So I don't think that this is any indication that he will be a part of the squad. And I'm hoping that we do find a place for Cedric outside of the team. I feel like if Timber was here, he probably would have started over Cedric or come on instead of Cedric and been in the squad instead of Cedric. So there is always that to consider. Thomas says, what do you think about that keeper? Who? Which keeper? I don't know. Their keeper? Our keeper? I don't know who you're talking about. Creeper Fam says, if Odegaard remains injured, would you start Nwaneri over Vieira come the start of the season? No, I don't think I would, because Vieira is, at the end of the day, a senior player, and Nwaneri is still a youth option. What I would do, though, is I'd consider different options. Smith Rowe, if he's back, for instance, I would consider using Smith Rowe instead, and giving Nwaneri an opportunity. What I would say is in pre-season, I'm giving Nwaneri minutes. I'm giving him minutes to check how he's developing, give him the opportunities in pre-season, and then we can give him time from the bench in some fixtures if so we need to. Carl Hein is who AFC Cape Town believes is the goalkeeper we're talking about. He's, again, a player that, sadly, for the player, is probably never going to be good enough to be an Arsenal goalkeeper number 1 or 2. He's made mistakes. You think about the game against, was it Brighton in the League Cup last season, where he gave away that penalty, and obviously has made a really poor pass into the midfield, which has undersold Jorginho, who sadly is connected too well with it, trying to control it, and it's gone back behind the goalkeeper. Carl Hein is an okay goalkeeper. He's just not. He's not, going to be good enough. Emmanuel says, Hein, and you are conveniently avoiding the... I just didn't. I just tackled it head on. So, no, certainly not avoiding it at all. He's not good enough, and probably won't be good enough, but hopefully he'll be good enough for a club somewhere and get a good career out of it as well. Cape Town says he's still young, just needs a few loans here and there. I assume that's Nwaneri, and I think that's certainly the case. I think he'll certainly need... We say he'll need a loan, but Saka certainly didn't. Saka didn't go on loan. He was immediately seen as good enough. And at 16 years of age, both Nwaneri and Myles Lewis-Skelly will face that same expectation as well. They could be good enough for Arsenal's long-term future, and they may not need loans. So let's wait and see. Let's wait and see what happens with them. Let's go to Meat B says, Zinchenko again. Is this becoming a real problem? No, he was injured at the end of last season. This is just a continuation of that same injury. So there's not, it's not a new problem to my understanding. He's still recovering from that issue he had at the end of last season. So as far as I'm aware, it's not a new injury. So no, I'm not treating this as any kind of different. Supercat says it was good enough for a horrific Arsenal team. It wasn't, it's pre-season and there's lots of changes, lots of different partnerships being tested out and tried. So not sure that we can glean anything from this in terms of what we can expect next season at all. So there you go. The one thing I am disappointed, and I'll end the show on this, the one thing I'm a little bit disappointed is obviously Balogun not scoring meant that we did draw the game. And last summer, we won all of our games, against Nurnberg and Orlando and Chelsea and Everton and Sevilla. We won all our games and we went into the season with real momentum. I'm hoping we can build up that same momentum with the games that are to come. We couldn't start that momentum early enough, but hopefully we get the momentum built in the coming days. I think the arrival of Declan Rice, the arrival of Timber is going to be further boost to this squad. I look forward to seeing that. There's an expectation that it will be done today. When it'll be announced is, of course, the next thing. We say done. It is, in quotation marks, done. It's just kind of the details being ticked off. But there is an expectation that will be sent to West Ham for it all to be completed and finished today, and an announcement will be done imminently. So let's wait and see. But thank you everyone for tuning in. Very much appreciated. Do subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. I'll be back with you, if not this evening, then of course tomorrow. And keep an eye out for another podcast where you might see me appearing very, very soon. Have a fantastic day. Keep yourself safe and well. And as always, up the Arsenal.